Hello, and welcome to the Being Human podcast, where we explore what it means to truly be human, physically, mentally, and spiritually. We upload an episode of this podcast every single week, so hit that subscribe button. You do not want to miss any of these episodes. The Being Human podcast is now brought to you by Grappler's Coffee. You should be consuming at least some caffeine on a regular basis, and when you do, you want to do it the right way. Grappler's Coffee is an outstanding coffee. It's going to improve your performance both on and off the mats. And all you need to do to get a bag of this is to go to mrbassets.com. And when you're there, use the code WAG10 for 10% off your order. And don't forget to pick up a bar of Grappler's soap too whilst you're there. In this episode of the podcast, I sat down with Colin Byrne. Colin is one of the founders of the McGregor FAST program. He's been trainer and cornerman to Conor McGregor for a number of years. He's ran Conor's camps. He's been a big part of Conor's journey and his success. I talked to Colin about the McGregor FAST program. How did the FAST program come about? Why did it come about? What are the principles it's based on? We went into the details of it and exactly how it works. I also talked to Colin about Conor's upcoming fight with Michael Chandler, which will soon be upon us. He gave his opinions and some very interesting insights. We also talked about training in general. We talked about training for athletes versus non-athletes. Is it healthy to be a professional athlete? We talked about ultra endurance events, a whole lot about health, fitness, lifestyle, a bit of philosophy as well. I really vibed with Colin. I do not doubt you'll garner a great deal of sagacity in listening to him, his stories, and what he has to share. If you do, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, drop a comment below, share it around on social media, and of course make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and thank you for supporting Being Human. So go on, recount that story again quickly for us, the one you were just telling me. We said we both have the same Muhammad Ali photo on the wall, and you told me something about it that I didn't know.
Yeah, I always thought it was because from a kid, my old man used to wake me up, and my mother used to send me to bed when the Ali fights were on, because they were on at 2-3 in the morning. My father used to come down, wake me up, sneak me down so I could watch the fights. He'd fall asleep, I'd watch them. And that one was Sonny Liston, who used to work for the mafia as a debt collector. And he threw the fight in the 6th round. So Ali kind of, if you watch the fight, he kind of glances him with this punch. And this is overreaction. Sonny Liston falls down, rolls around, and it's Muhammad Ali being mad in the shot that he's trained for 3 months for this guy who took a dive for a rigged fight. And that's what it was. And then the class of the man was afterwards in the press conference, instead of bitching and moaning about, you play the game, it's business, right? He said, like, all your cameras take photographs at 1/100 of a second, really fast, like this, and everybody blinked and all the cameras couldn't get my speed. I hit him so fast, and that's how he did it. So it only came to an abrupt death a few years later after that, wasn't it?
Yeah, I never knew that, but that makes a lot more sense now why he was so angry and enigmatic after he landed or didn't land the shot.
Yeah, he was a small-time debt collector for the MAF, breaking fingers.
Wow, that's a really interesting story.
Yeah.
So, go though. I'll start off with this question then, actually. Obviously, you know Conor very well. A lot of comparisons have been made over the years between Conor and Muhammad Ali. Do you personally see those comparisons between the two of them?
I do, but not in the in what it represents. It's not really about like fighting, I suppose, at that sense. It's how it is in the psyche of culture. It's a cultural thing, and I think once in a generation you get a cultural character that comes along, whether it's a movie star or whether it's a combat athlete or an athlete or somebody that kind of everybody likes. And that's one thing about people like Ali or Conor. It crosses barriers of race, country, gender, which is kind of hard to do, because usually people pick a side on black and white, I'm Irish, I'm American, I'm Australian, and then pick that flag and they stick with that. They pick with I'm a Mac guy, and it's hard to get someone that just sets across all can have a foot in every camp, and that's I think those guys are just one in a generation.
Yeah, people that transcend those boundaries, we're all pocketed into these definitions in life in one way or another. Like you said, we're in this camp or that camp, and it takes a massive figure to be able to break out of that and transcend. You founded the McGregor FAST program. I want to talk to you a lot about that today. But to start off with, if you could give me your background, please, Colin, in terms of who you are, what you do, and how your part in the McGregor FAST program originally came about.
Well, the McGregor fasting, the brainchild of that is Dr. Julian Dalby. So, and myself, Julian, and Conor would be like the founding members of it. So that would come back from Julian. Jules is is a doctor, but he was also like a professional cyclist, and was a huge mentor to me because I lived and raced with him in for teams in Guadeloupe and in Dakar and Senegal. And everything I learned about how to get in shape or eat or just was from him. So he'd come up with this training program. Originally, it was for cycling, and he'd been working on this kind of like just adding some stuff to people's training regiment and coming up with structure for training for cyclists. And what happened was Conor had lost the Diaz 1 fight, and a few weeks later, I got a text off him on Messenger, just what's up, and like I know Conor since he started, so he knew that I'd raced bicycles, and after that Diaz fight, he figured there was his cardio wasn't so good, and he asked me could I give him some help, coming from the cycling background, and would I give him a little bit of guidance on what to do. So for me, that was a lot of responsibility just to take on myself because there was so much at stake. And I got in touch with Julian because I was in Portugal. Jules was in Dublin, and I said, look, this guy called Conor McGregor. And by chance, Jules had done ring doc at the UFC in Dublin. So there's a photograph of Conor and then Doc's in the background as the ring doc. And he had he'd said, yeah, I know the guy. I said, look, he's looking for a little bit of guidance, a little bit of advice on what to do. So Jules met up with him in Dublin and brought him to a lab tested him. We all came down here for a week and trained for a week. And, just what they were doing was kind of wrong, basically. I found that, if you break down what MMA is, first of all, in sports, everyone does what everyone does. So at the time in MMA, everyone was hitting tires with a sled or with a big hammer. Do you remember that? And pushing sleds. That was pretty much, or you tie a rope around the guy's waist while he does ground and pound on a bag. That was pretty much cardio for MMA. And they all had a tendency to overtrain. They all had a tendency to be the first guy in the gym, last guy out of the gym. No real structure to the conditioning aspect of things. Plus, he was so efficient at what he did, he never got pushed. So he was efficient at his movement. He was efficient at grappling. He was efficient at striking. So it was very hard to push the guy and redline him. So that's what we did. We kind of started finding aspects of things we could do, like put him on a rower, put him on a bike, hill sprints, things like this that he could do that would kind of push him where he couldn't be pushed before. And in that, Jules put together a program which developed on into being the FAST program.
And talk to me exactly how that works. Obviously, you alluded to the experience you and Jules had with cycling, and obviously that's been a big part now of the McGregor program, of McGregor's training himself, the long rides on the bicycle. You've got the green zones, the amber zones, the red zones. Explain to me the thinking behind those and how exactly they work to create the physiological adaptations that you need for MMA conditioning.
Yeah, so if you take apart what your sport is, first of all, and don't go with the dogmatic beliefs of what everybody else does, right? So MMA is generally a 3-5 minute round. For Conor, it's 5-minute rounds. But in that 5 minutes, it's not a constant pace. It usually, especially for him, he starts off very fast, but you can't go at 100-meter sprint pace for 5 minutes. So in that effort, you've got to come back a little bit, recover, and then go again and come back and recover. So we brought in aspects of interval training into his regime. So for instance, the best type of training for MMA is MMA fighting, right? But you just can't fight all the time. And then second from that would be sparring, which you can't spar all the time because you're always going to be a little bit dinged up. So what you could do is you could push a guy really, really hard on a rower for 30 seconds, like as hard as you can go, trying to break the machine, without any damage to the athlete, but you're going to get a good response because you're going to adaptation cardio wise for the athlete. So what he's able to do then is go hard, fast, pull back, recover, and go again. And when you train like this, all you got to do is recover quicker than the guy that's in the cage with you. It's kind of like, there's a lion chasing you and me. I just got to outrun you. It just comes to that. So with the different zones, if you just go every day and you do like 100-meter sprints, Monday 100-meter sprints, Tuesday 100-meter sprints, Wednesday, something's going to break or you're going to get sick. You just can't do that. You got to give the body stress, and you got to let it adapt, and then you got to go again. So particular days, so for instance, like your freshest day, say you had a day off on Sunday, Monday's your freshest day, you're brand new, that would be your shortest, hardest, most explosive day, because that's your freshest day, so that's the day we're going to kill you. So we're going to do maximum red line, red zone, hard sprints, short, big efforts, full efforts. Then the next day you're going to be a little bit beat up from that. So then we started work on orange zone. So say, for instance, like anaerobic threshold. So that would be the point where your body is producing too much lactate. So you're in and around that and getting your body used to dealing with the lactate and clearing it quicker. And then the next day you're kind of beat up from those 2 days. So you just do a green zone. You just go out and you go out on the bike handy for an hour and a half, 2 hours, have a little chat with your friends. That kind of pace, and you're burning fat. So we generally worked off that, and then you take a rest day. Rest day doesn't mean like just sit down playing PlayStation. You just do something else. Do some movement. Do some, hang out with your kids. Go on a climbing wall. Go swimming. Do something else that switches off from the mental aspect and the physical aspect of the game that you're doing all the time. Because you'll soon get sick of it, or you 12 weeks of the training camp. It's 12 weeks. You got to pace yourself for the 12 weeks, and we work in those kind of small mesocycles. Add load, adapt, add more load, adapt, add more load, adapt, and then taper back a little bit and then go again. So it's measurable. So you're looking at wattage, especially with like a rower or a watt bike. So you can see what you're doing. You work off heart rate and work off resting heart rate, and start bringing some data in more so than how you feel, because how you feel is not really good gauge on anything. I've had days on the bike where I felt like shit when an hour into the race thinking like this is shit, and then all of a sudden 2 hours in I'm flying. So confusing those two things is something that people do all the time. Logging stuff, writing it down, huge. Having a plan and sticking to it. So it's more like, even if you did small things from what they were doing beforehand, if you did a small couple of things, it would have made a huge difference.
Yeah, I think that's a really good principle to have, to log what you do, to make it a science, to make it a numbers game. And that, as you just said, really seems to be what you guys did with the FAST program. MMA fighters before would just go in, as you said, try and redline every day, train as hard as they could. And I've definitely had that mentality myself before my own training. I've thought, I should always train as hard as I possibly can each day. That's how I'm going to get the most out of training. But as you said, that there's a science to it, and it can be much more beneficial to have those longer cycles, those longer runs. Talk to me about how important those really long, steady state cardio sessions are for a fast kind of interval sport like MMA. How essential is it beyond just getting that session in when you can't redline, having a session where you can still get it in at a steady state? Is there still the case to be made anyway for making sure you get those longer sessions in? Will people still see beneficial conditioning gains in their fight, in their sparring, from getting those long sessions in?
Yeah, you'll get leaner. and being lean's kind of really what you want. I mean, there's no point in being a fat athlete. You're not optimum. I mean, Charles Poliquin says you should have penis skin on the back of your tricep, right? that was his one. So you should be under 10%. Like if you're a pro athlete and you're like walking around at 15-20% body fat, you're not a pro athlete. Like you got to take it seriously. So like you got to feed all that fat with oxygen. So why not get rid of the fat and be more proficient, be more effective in what you're trying to do. So like if you're any sort of athlete, you should be under 10% for a male anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I myself, I don't compete MMA. I compete submission grappling, no-gi. And I think that's something we're going to see in the next, not even 10, probably the next 5 years in jiu-jitsu. We've already seen it in MMA now, I think. But people, fighters, grapplers, really starting to train like athletes, starting to take strength conditioning seriously. Because you see so many grapplers, they're just trying to pack on as much muscle as possible. And it does make more sense for grappling because the more weight you have, the more strength you have. Obviously, it's going to benefit you. But at the same time, I think the people that are really going to excel over the next 5 years are those people that, like you said, are living, training like athletes. That's not just strong and big, but are lean as well, able to push that pace. Because once a sport's well established, the technique level between the top players, it's all round about the same. And I think that conditioning piece can be a really defining factor.
Yeah, I think grappling's got to a stage where it's got very efficient. And when Hickson came back and said it's efficient, but it's not effective. And even with the sub only, if you're a good jiu-jitsu guy or grappling guy, without saying jiu-jitsu, say grappling guy, you kind of know where all the traps are, and you can play negative jiu-jitsu and not get subbed. And generally you'll get subbed when you're going for stuff and leaving space open. But you'll see guys, even ex-UFC guys, that go in and do these super matches where they don't engage for the whole 10 minutes and they get a draw. But they didn't fight to win, they fought to not lose, right? And even with proficient grapplers, I find all they got to do is practice the bit at the end where you get on my back, I get on your back, and see who can sub each other quickest. And I mean, I think with grappling being the rule set kind of plays into it more so than anything else. I mean, being lean, you're just going to be more efficient. To like, say for instance, like Cron Gracie or someone like that, who's an attacking kind of guy, who doesn't really care if you pass his guard. He's just always going to try and sub you rather than win by points or any of that kind of stuff. So I think all athletes definitely should be working on lean. And the easiest way to do is just even go out and just go for a brisk walk. Once you're going over like 35 minutes, 40 minutes, you're starting to kind of burn fat. So it's just different. It's good meditation. Go out, listen to a podcast, go out with your friends, have a chat. You should be going at that like chatty pace. So if you're on a bike, you should be able to have a chat, go out for an hour, get some sunshine, get some fresh air. Win-win.
Yeah, I agree. I think people sometimes focus too much on the protocol when really it's the holistic practice, right? Rather than just getting on a treadmill indoors, bright lights in your face, maybe at like 10 o'clock at night, and just trucking on the treadmill. That's not really going to feel pleasurable. But if you go outside in the sun for a walk with your mate for an hour, it's going to be a very different experience. You're probably going to get, an even better workout from it. And you're going to get all the other benefits as well. And obviously just the mental side of it, rather than the monotony of being on the treadmill. It doesn't feel like you're having a workout in any kind of way. You're just having fun, socializing.
That's it, So like there is a lot of pluses just getting outside, it really is. I mean, I couldn't think of anything worse than sitting on a treadmill or walking on a treadmill for an hour. It feels like 10, just get outside.
How important is road running as part of a conditioning program? I saw the Muay Thai fighter Damien Trainer post on Instagram the other day. He said he thinks one of the reasons so many people are getting shin breaks now from kick checking is that fighters don't do a lot of road running anymore. They do other cardio methods, such as cycling, such as rowing, and because they're not getting that stress impact on their joints, on their shins from the road running, it's leading to them having a less robust body. It's interesting because then I suppose the other side of the spectrum, you have Conor doing a lot of road work before the third Poirier fight, and that actually was kind of like a tipping point for him, right? Too much stress, which weakened the leg and obviously led to his shin break. So where does the balance lie there, and how important do you think it is? Is it essential for fighters to do at least a bit of road running?
I think, you're talking about like you're when you're standing up or being on a bike, your kind of heart's in a different spot, as in anatomically, right? So if you're on a bike, you're leaning over a little bit, so your heart's pumping different. When you're standing up, it's pumping up. So as for cardio wise, running, I don't know if there's been any studies on whether it makes any difference to stress factors or breaks, but I think breaks just come down to being where you hit the leg, really, isn't it? It's just one of those unfortunate things. If you're going to check kicks with your shin, it's your shin hitting against his shin, and if you turn it the wrong way, his might be stronger in a position than yours. I don't think running's going to make any difference to that. I think you don't see it in Thai boxing too often with Thais, probably because they're doing this since they're 4. And they're finished at 21. So I think age plays a factor. Western fighters are a lot older than Thais, so you don't see 35-year-old Thai fighters. They're pretty much washed up by 22 with 400 fights under their belt. Does it make a difference running? I don't know. I mean, initially when we started working with Conor, he couldn't run, so that's why he had the tear in the knee. So the knee was bad. So we wanted him to run, and we compromised that with running up stairs, because you're less steps, less weight on the leg because you're going upstairs, and he always loved running, and eventually he got back to running again. But I wouldn't say it made any aspect in the break with the Poirier fight. I think it was just unfortunate, For me, when it happened, it looked like he just bent his leg back because I was in the corner, so he rolled on the ankle, and it was 10 seconds ago we jumped. You're already getting up to to jump in, so but then it just broke. So it's one of those things. No, it's the first one I saw one in real life with all the fights I've been to. So, but I mean, it's not happened that much in the UFC with all the fights that are on. So what's happened? 3 times, maybe 4 times.
Yeah, I think before Anderson's there was one years and years ago, a guy named Corey Hill. And then obviously I think we've seen, like 3 Andersons, Chris Weidman's, and then Connor's in the past.
Yeah.
5 to 7 years, whatever it's been.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you said, when you consider it as a percentage of the amount of fights in the UFC, the amount of fights in MMA as a whole, it's not a common thing by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, I'd be more worried about someone losing their eye with the amount of eye pokes. Live on camera with someone's eyes hanging out. So
that's going to be a wild. I don't want to say when it happens.
Yeah.
Such words that would be a wild one if it were to happen.
I thought they'd change the gloves a little bit more with that in mind. Obviously, they look exactly the same as the old ones, but probably smaller.
Yeah.
But they had the opportunity to do it and they didn't.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not sure I don't know if there's patents in place where we've got certain contracts which are preventing them. But there's other gloves out there. I think even the Bellator gloves are a lot more curved. They prevent the frequency of eye pokes. So I'm not sure why they're not changing the gloves. I do think there are better designs out there. So it'll be interesting to see if if an event does come along, if that inspires them, pushes them to make the change. Carrying on then from that, speaking of the last Poirier fight, obviously we're only a few weeks out now from Conor's return. How close are you working with Conor for this fight, and how do you see this fight going? Obviously, it's been a few years now since he's last been back in the octagon.
Well, See, like I don't think people have this ring rust thing. But I suppose that depends on the person. I'd be the sort of person that would get ring rust. I'd be the sort of person that would be I'm emotive. So I'd be, some days I'm not in the humor doing things, other days I am. Whereas some people can just show up whatever's going on and perform. He'd be more like that. This fight, it's like all these fights, they're at that level. You don't know what way they're going to go, and that's what makes MMA interesting. Everyone stays up to see what's going to happen, because you'd like to think one thing had happened, and then you just have no idea what's going to happen, because you've got two very different kind of athletes. I mean, Conor is very much a matador, very precise, very skillful. Probably the most skillful MMA fighter there's been, that understands very subtle details, and I don't see it anywhere else. Whereas Chandler is this kind of, coiled up spring of explosiveness, very, very fast, very explosive, and game. I don't see it being a 5-round fight.
No, definitely not.
That's one. Do you know how many 5-round fights Conor's had? I mean, that went 5 rounds.
I think it's only the second Diaz fight, right?
That is it. So
yeah.
He's had like 28 fights, and only one has gone 5 rounds. 1 4-round fight, a 1 3-round fight, the rest are 1s and 2s. So it's like 19 knockouts out of 22 wins. Like it's not, he's not a decision guy. It's one of those ones where you've got the style of Chandler would suit Conor, as in what doesn't suit Conor. Southpaws, tall southpaws don't really suit Conor. What suits Conor is shorter, orthodox shooters, wrestlers, big overhands. Suits easy, just steps off and you walk onto a left straight. I mean, that's his game, and everything he does is just for that shot, like all the spinning, jumping, sprinting off the thing. It's just he's looking for the space for that left straight, and you'll see it in a lot of. I mean, where was he? The first camp we worked on was the DS2 in Vegas, and Ido Portal was there, and all these posters got stuck on the wall to make it more homely, this kind of like warehouse that we turned into a gym. And they were all shots of Conor finishing fights, but every shot was the same. Every shot was a left straight. And Ido says to me, "Do you see notice the difference in any of these? They're all the same shot." And everything he does is to find the shot and get that one shot, which is very rare for most people, because they just throw everything kitchen sink and hopefully something goes. But he's very methodical in his approach and his footwork, and the understanding of space and time and where you should be, where he should be, and not waste a shot. I mean, that's really his game. So you've got a guy that's going to come at him fast, explosive, and either try and knock him out or take him down, So it's an interesting little riddle.
Yeah, I think it was John Kavanagh that I heard recently who said he foresees it being very similar to the Mendes fight, which on paper would make a lot of sense. Mendes, short, compact, explosive, orthodox wrestler. So it would make a lot of sense to see the same kind of fight play out in that way if Conor's able to implement his game in the same way he did against Mendes. It'll be an interesting fight to see. I'm looking forward to it. On the other side of the tracks, we've talked a lot about athletic performance, the training regimes that athletes should or should not go through. How different is it for the everyday person from just like a health, a longevity perspective? Are the training principles the same for both the athlete and the person just looking to have the best quality of life day to day, or is there a difference to them?
Good question. It's very unhealthy to be a pro athlete. That's the simple version. It's not good for you to be training like even when it's a regime, it takes from you. So if you're a professional athlete putting out, huge amounts of effort all the time, it's going to age you, where it's if you just wanted to be a healthy guy, you don't have to do anywhere near as much of that to be optimum as a human. So I would say that by 10%, but in a sense where you still have to do all the right things. You still got to like eat right. You still good air, good company, those type of things. And then training wise, I've changed the word from training just to practice. So you should do something every day, not go to the gym 3 times a week for an hour, and make it such a kind of a ritual where you're gonna get me bag and pack my bag and have a little protein. You can in your day you could, like Ido probably does it best. Ido just floats around, you look around, he's doing something, rather than just sitting on the chair all the time. So I mean, I fall into those laziness aspects as well, because it's easy to do, but you should have like a practice where you bring things into your life that you start to, as you get older, will probably do less of. Like for instance, and this is I'm preaching to myself here, is jumping is a big one. So if you can add jumping into your if you just go to the gym, you're one of those guys that goes to the gym 3 times a week and lifts weights, whatever you do there. When you're finished, do some box jumps. Makes a big difference in how you age. Also like intervals. Do some intervals once a week. Lift some heavy weights. But you don't have to do it like a pro athlete, because like I say, they're getting ready for an actual competition, or they have a season of competitions. Like for instance, like the Giro d'Italia's on at the moment, the Italian tour in cycling, and that's like 200k every day, finished on a mountaintop climb. It's not, yeah, they're phenomenal, but it's not the healthiest way to live, and you can only do it for a certain amount of time, before you pay the price on it. So for me, it would be, if someone was saying to me, hey, I want to be in shape, well, get lean would be one. Manage what you eat and write it down. Have a program. Invest in yourself. So get, like, if you wanted to say squat, like go get a private lesson off an Olympic lifter, someone that knows how to squat, not a PT. You should have at least a couple of heavy sessions a week, one interval session a week, and then just mix it up. Do something like rock climb and have fun. Just make it fun more than just like a punishment that I have to do in order to kind of look a certain way. The looking is a kind of secondary factor to the work, and in the work you'll function better. So like as a person, you'll function better, and that's or sit down and watch Netflix and eat shit, So it's those things, and there's more to it than that. It's like, it's how you think as well, it's how you act, it's what you look at, it's what you consume, mentally as well as physically. So wean yourself off the Instagram scroll, wean yourself off stuff that's just not good for you. So I'd say, yeah, what Conor does and what everybody else should do is very, very different, but flavor of what he does is good. You gotta get out of bread every now and then. I think that I was doing. I did a Wim Hof. Do you know the Wim Hof breathing method?
Yeah, I've tried it myself.
So I did that a few times, and then I was out on a mountain bike one day, and I was going up this hill, and I thought, this is pretty much the same thing, but most people don't get anaerobic anymore. So they're not feeling like I'm gonna shit and puke and faint at the same time. Whereas I do that like a couple of times a week. Whereas if you've never been, redlined yourself and then you start, doing Wim Hof, you feel like, whoa, this just feels really strange and a little bit scary. But I think if you just went out and ran up a big long hill, or got on a mountain bike and went mountain biking, you feel pretty much the same. So.
Yeah, I think you raised so many good points there that I'm in absolute agreement with. I alluded to it a few minutes before. People getting caught in the trap of focusing on the protocols, focusing on the actions rather than the holistic practice. People thinking, oh, I'm going to get this workout in because it's going to improve this metric, such as my VO2 max or this and that, rather than focusing on an all-round healthy lifestyle. I think the classic example, which is probably most prominent in the health and fitness space, is when it comes to nutrition. You've got so many nutritionists, dietitians, even PhDs in nutrition, just out on Instagram talking about how, oh, you just need to break down your calories this way and stay on your calories. And, that's the most important thing because that's how you lose weight. Well, I suppose, yeah, in a very strict sense, yes, it's obviously important. You're not gorging yourself on calories, but there's so much more to it than that. And that, I think, gives people the message that so long as you track this one metric, so long as you track your calories, or, so long as you track your calories burned on the treadmill, on the watt bike, whatever it is, you're going to be a healthy individual. Whereas it kind of it breeds neuroticism. And I think what it does is it puts your blinders on, and you forget or don't even realize what the whole point is. The whole point of staying in your calories is that you're eating a nutritious diet full of good organic foods that are actually going to make you feel good, make you healthy and vital. The point isn't that you stay in your calories. The point is that you're eating healthy and nutritious foods. And the same is true with training, right? Like you said, don't necessarily think about it as training if you're just the everyday person. Think about it as a practice. Have fun, do rock climbing. The amount of movements you're going to get in doing rock climbing, you're not going to get through your average gym workout. So I think that was a really good actionable piece of advice. To give us firsthand on your end, what's your training regime or practice looking like at the moment, week to week?
Day to day. So it always needs improvement. I slide, so get up in the morning, go to the beach. I mean, not everyone has my lifestyle, so I go to the beach, do some Kundalini yoga and some mobility stretching. So I kind of move my spine, and I'm doing that every day for the last couple of years. And then I get up and I have some oats and a coffee, and I'll either do a little bit of work on the computer. I'm writing a book, so I do a little bit of writing, and then I'll either lift or I will ride my bike. And I'm riding a ultra distance bike race in Granada called Badlands in September. It's 750 kilometers off road on a gravel bike. With gravel bikes, like if you got a mountain bike and you cross it with a racing bike, you have a baby gravel bike. So it's like a racing bike with big chunky wheels that you can put bags on. And this thing, Badlands, it's 750 kilometers unassisted in the Granada desert and climbs 15,000 meters. So I'm doing that in September. So it's not, I'm not doing it to race because my racing days are long gone. It's for the experience. So I think you get 10 guys that'll race it, and the other 290 are just gonna follow along, and it's where the spaghetti westerns were made. So it's gonna be epic scenery, and the nighttime thing is really what kind of gets me, because like some of it's gonna be dark, so you have to have a light, and all you have is that beam and nothing else, and a GPS unit to tell you to go left and right on some little trail somewhere. So I'm in the process of kind of training for that. And then I do martial arts. I still teach every evening. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday we have an open mat. And tonight I'm teaching jiu-jitsu. I struggle a little bit with that because like I found it hard. I suppose like Conor did his camp here for the Poirier 2 fight, because he's done 3 rounds. So 2. So with 25 guys here. For 14 weeks, and then I was in Abu Dhabi. Then I was in the corner in the fight, and it was hard to come back here and then deal with some young lad walking in the door who's like, so what's this MMA stuff, and things. I just come in and wash the mat and open the door, and it was hard to go back to like here's how to keep your hands up, throw a jab, or here's how to shrimp, and I struggled with that for a while because it was good, fuck it, it's what am I doing here? Like, it's but that's my kind of, that's what I do. So I really struggled to go back, because I was like, well, I've kind of reached the peak of what I wanted to do. I've opened the place 14 years ago, got best guy on the planet to come down, run the camp, and be in the corner. I mean, where did you go from here? And I just go back to square one. Just go back and teach some kids how to, because they're the ones that need it. Because it's not really about shrimping or jabbing, or it's really about turning boys into men. It's really about giving kids a little bit of guidance. It's really about getting them away from the bad shit that's everywhere, and getting them into something that's productive. And so I tussled with that for a while, and I spoke to a few people about it, and they said, well, yeah, that really is the challenge. So I teach a bunch of teenage kids and a couple of ex-pro wrestlers how to do MMA even. So and I've embraced that again. So it just goes full circle,
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I want to come back to that, but before we do, just a bit more on the Badlands cycle. 750 kilometers, 15,000 meters of ascent. That sounds insane. Obviously, you've got a great amount of experience when it comes to cycling. How many miles week to week are you putting in on the bike in order to prepare for that? I'm intrigued as to what the training volume needs to be like.
Not enough. It's hard for training. See, there's a couple of things, right? So I've got like probably 1,000 races in my legs, probably 100,000, 150,000 kilometers in my legs. So there's a lot of resilience, or not resilience, where there's a lot of memory in the muscle of what it feels like to be on a bike. But the longest races I ever rode were fucking, 200k, 150k. They're Sunday race would be 160k. Generally, yeah. Like I rode a coast to coast one time that was Dublin to Galway to Dublin the second day. So that was like 250 one day too. But this is off road, so your average speed is going to go from 40 kilometers an hour down to like 16, 17. So I need to do 250k the first day in order to get to a spot where I might be able to get a bed, because you got to bring everything with you, like sleeping bag and all that, because you're in the desert. But there's small little villages along the way, and just from doing the research, and I need to get to this, because I want, like, realistically, I don't want to ride 14, 15 hours on the bike and then get into a sleeping bag. It's like there's no fun in it. It's got to be a bed in the shower, right? I gotta like just
that makes a world of difference, right?
Huge. Rather than you're full of salt, sticky, get into a sleeping bag with a bunch of whatever's on the ground, and trying to get your head down. And then get up and do 250 again the next day. So it's completely mental. And I did a little test. I rode a gravel race here, a 2-day gravel race, like a couple of months back. One was like 90 kilometers. So it was like 4.5, 5 hours or something like this. And a couple of things I realized is why I don't race anymore. And second was like how bad my concentration is. I don't know if you've focused on something for 5 hours at any stage lately. I haven't. It's like 10 seconds, like onto the next like 20 pages open on my laptop, and that was an eye opener. The first day I just lost focus and wasn't able to stay in the group. I ended up drifting off the group, and then I'm in another group and drifting, not being able to hold the wheel, because in cycling, if you're close to a wheel, it's a lot easier aerodynamic wise. It's like 30% easier. And then let little gaps go, and then when the gap goes, there's no advantage on where he is, and then trying to close. It's all these mini efforts that you got to do in between. And I found after a while I just switched off. And then on the second day, I kind of remembered what it was like to just stay switched on and focused for 4 hours. So with this, I got to stay fairly focused for 15 hours. And it's I've no doubt that physically I could just not train for it and just get on and ride it, because you're just plodding along. But it's, can you keep the mental aspect of it going more so? I don't know if you've ever seen someone die. It fucking takes them forever. Your body will just troop through everything. It just goes on and on and on. It's just like, but it's the head game that I'm interested in this. So, I've been doing miles, not enough. Like I get to train instead of doing loops. I get to train in the morning at 6 o'clock and go east, and then just I have to ride in a straight line back. Because it's something different in if you leave your house, do a loop, come back. Because at any stage you can jump off the loop and get back, right? But if you got to train, 150k down the road, and there's only one way back, that's it. So those aspect of things, point to points, I think is a big thing, more so than ideally I should be doing more kilometers than I am, but I'm still not in love with it. I'm still struggling with the thing, and I'm at this kind of like Parkinson's law. That Parkinson's law, give someone 3 months, 3 days, 3 hours to do it, they'll get it done. You procrastinate because like, it's
oh yes, yeah.
It's like if I say to you, hey, you're gonna fight this guy in 6 months, yeah, fucking sign me up, I'll take that fight, and you're like, whatever, and then 6 weeks, then it's 6 days, and then you realize, fuck man, you're not sleeping because you're thinking about this fight that you signed up for, and you're on the poster, and you said I do it, fucking. So it's just those aspect of things. So yeah, like I said, I'm riding it for the experience of it, and it mainly it's a mental thing. So my rides now are consistent of point to point. I need to put some more in and get a little bit more serious about it. But physically, it's not something you can really train for. The last thing I want to be doing is going out and riding 14 hours back to back. I'm going to have no life. Whereas I could go out and do 6 hours, 7 hours, 10 hours, once a week, and maybe do a couple of back-to-back 5-6 hours, and for me that's enough. And then also add in some intervals as well, just to have that little bit more kind of pep in the step, because you're going to have a lot of climbing, plus your bike is going to weigh 15 kilos heavier, plus it's going to manage differently, because I'm still riding on an empty bike, but you're going to have like a bag under the saddle, bag under the bars, bag in the frame. And then when the bike maneuvers differently and it's heavier, so it's not, if you're just going out and you haven't trained with a fully loaded bike, it's going to be a bit of a shock to the system when the day comes. But and also that you're in an event, and also that there's other people eggs you on. There's a lot of that. Like if you ran, for instance, if you never trained for a marathon, in the London Marathon, you'd finish it because you get just dragged along with the crowd. There's a thing in cycling where when you put a yellow jersey on a guy, he just goes faster. Because you're the dude, or the camera comes up beside you on the motorcycle. Yeah, you just go faster because you're the dude. You're on telly. So this for me, this is a 95% mental game, and it makes me uncomfortable with the nighttime stuff, because I've already checked. There's no moon that week, so it's going to be completely pitch dark, which will be great for the stars, but it won't be great to see where you're going. So you just like focus on that little beam in front of you and not fall apart.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a fair bit of ultra running at this point, and I agree. I think any physical endeavor is, of course, mental as well, and especially fighting is very mental in a different kind of way. But when it comes to ultra endurance, obviously, if you're in a race and you have a strict time that you want to hit, then obviously there becomes an even more of a physical aspect to it, because you're trying to maintain a certain tempo. But a massive part of it, because the event's so long, a massive part of it is just the mental aspect of it. And I think that's what draws a lot. It either draws people to ultra training, or it makes them avoid it at all costs, because it is so mental. And as you said, the attention span element of it. We're living in a world today with Instagram, with TikTok. Our attention span is just, we've got no patience anymore with anything. So like you said, when you're on a gravel road, really having to pay attention to where you're riding. I've done a lot of trail running, so I know what it's like when you're heading down a mountain. You want to make the most of that time to go as quickly as possible, but by no means can you switch off and enjoy it, even though the physical demand is less, because you've got the wind in your sails, you're heading downhill. mentally, that's when you've got to be most engaged. You've got to watch where you're putting your feet, otherwise you're going to fall, you're going to injure yourself. And having to do that for a long period of time when we're not used to day to day anymore, really focusing on something for a long period of time is it's a taxing job. So I can definitely appreciate that.
You can practice for it though. It's like everything. If you practice for short attention, you'll have short attention. So if that's all you're doing all the time, you'll have short attention. But if you practice for going out, not bringing headphones with you, and just experiencing how your body's moving and breathing and rhythm and all those other things that you're getting from the feedback rather than set of cans on and playing tunes, you can really practice at that and just get better at it. The ultra stuff's interesting because like it's full of addicts. Did you know this? Did you? Or ex-addicts? Because
it's something that draws them in.
Yeah, because you can see it as well. It's just like, it'll just keep you busy for the next 10 hours. Don't have to think about smack, and it draws in. I never was drawn to ultra stuff. I was never, like as Jules says, it's just always the worst athletes are ultra. And he has a point because he's like, best athletes are 100-meter sprinters.
Yeah.
Because you're done in 8 seconds, 10 seconds, you go home. And then the longer, I can't beat him, so I'll just go 200. I can't beat him, I'll go 400. I go, fuck, I'll just go longer. And then the worst case scenario is the ultra guys. They're just the worst athletes.
Yeah.
Or addicts, so.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
That's his theory on it, so.
Yeah, no, because it's so much of it is mental, right? Because you're not having to reach like peak performance in the sense that you've got to train your body to be able to hit a certain power output, a certain speed, which takes, so much tweaking. You've got to be genetically wired for it as well, of course, and you've got to have a really specific training plan. Your body's got to be capable of it. Whereas, the physical demand is this, and that's where, but along, because the duration is so long, you're obviously going through so much pain. Like I said, you're having to concentrate for so long. It is so mental. Someone said to me a few months ago, a friend, they said, "Oh, why is it that like in these ultra marathons you see like middle-aged women winning? A 50-year-old woman is winning like the Moab 240. Like how come like they're dominating this space?" And my theory is really what you just said, which is if the marathon runners were running the ultras, they would be knocking it out of the park. If Kipchoge ran ultras, which I think he said he's going to do now, he would be blasting everybody. But to run a sub 2 hour marathon is so much more difficult from like a peak athletic performance perspective than like completing a 200-mile ultra. That's why that's what they focus on. That's what they hone in on, because not to say one accomplishment is bigger than the other. Obviously, it's all subjective to the person, and it's about what you get out of it yourself. But it really is. I think it's harder from a physical demand perspective to be able to hit a sub 2 hour marathon than it is to complete like a 100-mile ultra, a 200-mile ultra. Which is why I think you see a lot of people go into it later in life, and like you said, it draws in people that have been through a lot in their life, because it's a lot more mental than physical.
Yeah, and it's good there's a spot for people like that. I mean, that's the thing, you can compete. Like when I was racing bikes, you just like finished at like 24, 25, and that's it, whereas now there's a division for somebody somewhere that you can just keep competing. 40's not old anymore. You can still compete at someone around the same level as you. That's what's great about competition these days is there's a lot of people that got back into competition, which is a super healthy thing. It gives you goal settings, it gives you something to train for, it gives you something to get out of bed for. And then there's some other dude that's, before 20, 30, 40 years ago, once it went past your peak, athletic peak, say with 25, 30, and, if you're gymnastics, it would be like 23 or something, that was it. You just went to the pub, ate some food, got married, had some kids. Whereas now you can get guys all the way up to whatever age you want to do, because there's a bunch of other people around the same age, same ability, same interest, and want to do something on a Sunday. That's all that they've been doing all week, and kept them focused and kept them alive and kept them young and kept them young at mind to get up and go out and get a bit of a buzz again, and it's I think it's great. And I think if you've never competed in anything, just, it doesn't matter what it is, it always feels the same. You get that little nervousness. Doesn't matter whether it's checkers or MMA or whether it's, an ultra or, because you told anyone you're going to do it, and everyone's like, how'd you get on, and there's something in that vulnerability where you put yourself forward and you feel like if you lose, you can get chopped down by people, but people don't. They think it's great that you're doing stuff. But for me, it's a case that finding new things to compete in, not necessarily winning, but just give yourself a little goal and something to reach for is just great for people. Just keeps people buzzed. I think it's a great little thing, and the fact there's so much stuff on is something for everybody.
I agree. I think competing is so important for people, for men especially. I think we've got that, innate instinct, that innate drive in us. And I think it's something that, like I said, there's so many opportunities now, but such a large proportion of society isn't getting it anymore because they're stuck indoors, they're stuck, just scrolling through Instagram. And I wanted to link that back to what you said about training young lads coming into your gym, starting up, grassroots. I just think it's so important. For someone, I'm 25 myself. When I was 20 years old, I wasn't, I was focused on getting, the best job I could from like a money perspective. I wasn't focused on my health and fitness. And as a result, I definitely lost a lot of community and having, like-minded, healthy, from a physical and mental perspective, people around me to help push me. I think it's so important for young men to have other young men around them to compete with, to help drive them, and to be involved in something in a very communal aspect. So, yeah, give me your perspective on that, if you can, about young lads coming into the gym, how important it is for them to not just learn how to fight, which I think is an important skill as well, but learn how to compete in a healthy way, and the importance of having brotherhood and community.
Yeah, I kind of look at it like a language, like you learn, or a skill set in life. So, for instance, like you learn speak English, you learn math, you learn how to run, how to do physical stuff. But learning like a combat sport is for me, it's it gives you a kind of like an invisible confidence. So, for instance, like I'm training martial arts since 1997, I suppose, and that got me into all sorts of things. I ended up working on doors in Dublin in nightclubs. I'm not a big guy, but dealing with the pressure of the ever-threatening violence that's around the corner every Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, So, but also in a sense where, if I remember, going to parties when I was a kid, and there was always some fucking asshole at the party that everyone's looking like, oh, I hope he goes, I hope he doesn't. How is he gonna? And he's ruining everybody's night, and he's just a dick. And now I can just go fuck off, and that's it, and go, and that's the end of it, So it gives me and then there's something like when I work in nightclubs, like I'm not a big guy, right? I'm 75 kilos, 5'9", fucking 5'8", and people look at me like, what the fuck does he know? They stands there and I'm telling you what's up. There's something in the confidence that people get because, especially with mixed martial arts, you've seen all the different variations of attacks that can come at you, whether it's kicking or punching or grappling or wherever, and all that's left after that is weapons. So you're confident in the fact that the guy standing in front of you isn't going to know anything near you. If you don't know him, he's not a world champion. He's not. And if he is a guy that's training hard, he doesn't have that built-up aggression in him in the first place, or this lack of understanding of what combat actually is, or this overinflated ego because his mother told him he was a king all his fucking life, and he's never really got strangled really quickly. And when people train, they get a lot of that stuff that's built up inside in them out, where they the anger translate into movement. It just releases that little pressure, that lot of like especially young men have, where they're growing up and they're kind of trying to fit themselves into this kind of like space where, you know, they're 22, they're adult 4 years, and they're meant to know everything what they want to do with the rest of their life, and they're trying to navigate the nuances of relationships. They're trying to navigate the nuances of like who they are, you know. And if there's a better place to learn, I'd say like martial arts, you know, whichever one you like. 'Cause some people don't, you know, MMA isn't for everybody. Jiu-jitsu is not for everybody. So if it's karate, whatever it is, don't look down on people or don't be snobby with people because they're doing a worse martial art than you. If someone's a taekwondo black belt, you know, fuck, they stuck at it for 3, 4, 5 years. You know, you got to give them props to that. So, before it would have been snobbish with what I'd recommend. But I think if you can get to a place where everyone's on the same page, or there's a good room, where, you know, lack of dickheads in the room is probably, but like I don't tolerate dicks in the gym. So like if you're being a dick, well, you don't have a place. It's a collective. It's a sound system. It's not just me. It's everybody. You got to fit in the group. If you don't fit in the group, you don't fit in with me. And doesn't matter what I'm teaching or what we're doing. It's got to be a collective in the room. It's not just me teaching a class. It's, you know, it's building an atmosphere where it just becomes one little thing. So we all go through fire together. You got to get an atmosphere with people. So for any kid that's grown up, do martial arts as a language. You know, that's it, and it'll stand to you. It's tough. It's hard. It's like fucking like anything, but like there's a price to pay. You get a few bangs and bruises and broken shit and injuries, but like that's pretty much a really low cost to pay for what you get as a human, as someone who's knows where your limits are. Because I think what happens with a lot of kids is they don't really know the edges. You know, they're in this kind of like little bubble where they haven't been to the bottom and they haven't been to the top. They're somewhere in the middle and they're floating around there. They can't imagine what it's like to be cold when they're hot. You know, it's kind of like, but a way to stimulate that was, even if you take jiu-jitsu, like some sweaty guy lying on you for 5 minutes, a little bit claustrophobic, haven't felt like that forever. And you either stay or you leave. And if you stay, well, you're gonna like figure it out and then get used to dealing with it. And all of a sudden, you're in this little battle where you're comfortable there. And then when life gets uncomfortable, which it will, you're able to have some sort of fallback on, and deal with it. Because like, if you think you're gonna go through life, you can go through your 20s without shit going pear-shaped. Something's gonna happen. Something's gonna go off, you know, whether that's physically or mentally or with someone around you or relationships or whatever. But if you've kind of been through the grinder with the physical aspect of things that affects you mentally, like training, especially with a combat sport, I'll find that you'll deal with it better. You know, and so for me, it's like it would be an essential. They brought it into school in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, because the prince was a big fan of jiu-jitsu. So instead of doing PE, he got like 50 guys from Brazil top team to come over and bought all mats for the schools, all gis for the kids, and then all of a sudden it's the national sport. I mean, not everyone's going to do that, but here you've got like an inscription to, in school you do your languages, you do your math, you do all stuff, and you do jiu-jitsu, not just jumping jacks that no one's interested in. And in that, you're gonna have to fight, because you know life is violent and it's everywhere. And sometimes it zigs instead of zags, but someday you're just gonna bump into it, and it's how you deal with it. Like I'll give you a little example. I was walking down the street one day in Dublin City, and I see this guy walking towards me, about 200 meters in front of me, and I look at him and I go, if he steps within 1 meter of me, I'm gonna punch him in the head. I just knew, like, he was up to no good. I'm not gonna ask him any questions. If he steps in, I'm just gonna hit him. And he stopped and he crossed the road. And you might say, okay, well, you might just stop. No, it's not that, because they're never looking for someone that's going to give them a broken nose, where their day is ruined. They can't go out and rob anybody for the rest of the day. You got a broken nose. You're easily identifiable. Your clothes are ripped. They just want to come up to you and go, listen, fuckhead, give me your money. And you just hand them over the money. He walks on. No one's going to know any different. That's never happened to me, ever. It happens to lots of people. And you'll always find, people have been mugged or, beat up 5, 6, 7, 8 times. Well, it never happens to me. What's the difference between me and you? It's because, one, of the confidence. Two is I kind of paying attention to my surroundings, reading the situation before it happens, more so than dealing when it's in your face. And I've got the skills. So if it does go pear-shaped and I can't I was half asleep because it was on me, the phone or headphones, and someone all of a sudden's in my space, I can deal with it. Whereas I never wanted to get there. And I think, it's just one of those things it's an essential. So, and I think it also, it make for a better world where people would, test themselves in a dojo. They know where they are in the grand scale of things. I'm either really good or I'm in the middle or I'm really bad. But you kind of know where you fit in. I'm going to be world champion. I'm not. You kind of know where you fit in. And in that, it'll give you the confidence to get better and stick at it, So yeah, do martial arts.
I think that's a really poetic and effective way to think about it. And that was a great example of that. Use martial arts. Think of martial arts as a language, because that's what it is. It's not verbal, but it's absolutely physical. I think that's a great way to think about it. As a final finishing note, I ask this to every guest, the ultimate existential question, really. And we've already alluded to it. We've talked a lot about lifestyle. What to you is the meaning of life? Do you think there is a meaning to life, or do you think it's one that we kind of choose ourselves?
It depends what day it is, I think. Some days I think it's completely random. And other days I think it's all completely scripted. And if there's certain things I know, and I just know, and I've always been like that, it's just intuition. I just know. Can't explain it. I don't ponder too much about it. I'm happy in the fact that I know. I don't have to dictate it. So there's a comfort in knowing, whether that's good or bad. But the fact that you actually just 100% know, like some people have faith, or some people say they have faith, but if you really, really, really believe, you're comfortable in that sense. And maybe they, so an example of that would be religion. They have faith in their religion, and they have a belief system, and then they can explain to you from some book that they read. For me, I would just, it's hard to kind of like put into words, but there's certain things that I just know, and I'm comfortable with that, and I don't need to ask, or I don't need to kind of explain to others, or I don't need to explain to myself. And if you want to get into a sense of like spirituality, is there, do you live on, sometimes I just think it's sometimes I just think it's an illusion. Sometimes I don't. And that will be my thought process, but the knowing will never change. So I'll have different thought processes, or I'll listen to different people about their views on things. But I just know certain things, and I'll know when they happen. I'll give an example of that. Like, so for instance, the first time after that Diaz one fight, when Conor came here for a week, I thought I wouldn't see him again. He came for a week, trained, we showed him what to do. I'm like, oh, happy to see the back of this dude, because I was bollocks. I was doing 2 sessions a day. Did the MMA with John and the guys, and then we did, myself and Jules did the cardio with Conor. I was like, hadn't trained twice a day for fucking years. And then he said to me, let's keep this going, come to Iceland. And then all of a sudden I was on the road 7 years. But I remember going to meet Jules for a coffee after that first week, and I said, you know what, we might end up going to see this fight. And we were actually part of the camp. And it just, you get these feelings where you just kind of know, like there's certain things I know about where I'm going to be or the people I'm going to meet. And if you've ever had like a near death experience, like really think you're going to die, I had one that's kind of profound because I wasn't ready. I had all these regrets, all these kind of like things where I should have said that. I wish they were here. I wish I could say that. And I had all these like huge regrets because the day you come to die it's just like now, and you won't be ready. But after that kind of changed me in a sense where every now and then I will just remember someone who's done something good for me and just send them a random message, about how what they did for me, even because most people don't know what you've done for them, or you might catch them at the time where they just think. And the other thing is gonna listen to people when they give you compliments. I used to have this thing where like, no, yeah, thanks. Yeah. And I wouldn't take the compliment. It's looking like when I was a kid, my mother wouldn't let me take money off me uncles or aunties. No. I have this thing with money. I find it hard to take money off people, but compliments, just listen to people because they're being vulnerable by saying to you, hey, listen, when I had a kid here who trained with me, he's married now with a kid, and he came down 5-6 years later and he said, look, I just want to tell you that, like, when I trained with you, like you taught me so much. You were like a father figure for me. I never had a father, and I just want you to let you know the difference you made in my life. I didn't know. I just thought you was a kid that came and trained, So you have to sit and listen to these compliments. But for me, there's certain things I know. I don't get too up anymore. I don't get too down. I stay nice and steady. I don't go with and if you hang around people who are really emotional, I just don't go with them. Let them run around. They'll come back to you eventually. I can't go with that pace. I have to keep it nice and steady so I can see a clear run of things. Like my old man used to say, wait for the hare to sit before you shoot it. You don't want to chase the hare around with your gun. He's going to sit eventually and then fucking pop him, So I find through life, I wait for the hare to sit. And the biggest one I learned is I'm an emotional guy. I'm a Cancerian. I'm emotive. I've always been that way. So when someone comes to me with emotion, I react and I have to respond. And when you react, you always overreact. Every emotional reaction is an overreaction. So I stop and I wait and I respond more so than bark back. Barking dogs never bite, right? So don't know if that answers your question, but
that absolutely answered my question, and I'm smiling so much because you speaking then was almost like I was talking into a mirror. There was so much of that I definitely identified with myself. I think there was a lot of truth in that. I love that answer, Colin, and this conversation as a whole has been great and incredibly insightful. So thank you very much for taking the time to sit down with me and discuss all the things that we have.